Hey, Phil from the future here. Two different recommended rounds. I recommend watching round two if you want to see Fairy Mastermind in action, and I recommend watching round four if you want to see some comically bad luck. Enjoy the show. Hello, folks. Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU, here for another Legacy video. Today's video is sponsored by Cardsphere.com, and we'll take a look at them a little bit later on. So, Pat sent me a donation deck list asking me to play a deck with Mercurial Spelldancer. And we went back and forth a couple of times, kind of assuming that we would want to Fire Blast people. Because this card's neat. It's unblockable. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put an oil counter on it. And when you deal combat damage to a player, you can remove 2 oil counters from it. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy it, you can choose new targets for the copy. So when I first saw this card a while back, I saw it in the context of Fire Blast you again, and you're probably pretty close to dead. And that was really impressive. We're going to play it in a more fair shell today, opting to just get back value with things like Thoughtseize, Ponder, Brainstorm, and so forth, although we do have some unfair stuff here. We have the Witherbloom Apprentice combo with Chain of Smog. Now, this is actually my second time recording this deck tech because I went to play it last week and this combo was bugged. How it's supposed to work is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life, and you can target yourself with Chain of Smog to discard your entire hand and then drain out your opponent 1 life at a time. As of last week, it wasn't working. As of this week, it is. Shout out to Daybreak Games. They're doing a great job with MTGO stuff. I know it's super frustrating waiting for some Magic cards that we want to play with, but they're doing great work on other stuff. Yeah, so we are essentially a bug. I hesitate to say full control. We're kind of like a bug mid-range deck that happens to have a combo finish and some of the elements that you might see in a grindy control deck like Uro. Sideboard's full of bug cards, like just generically good stuff. I'm gonna hop into some games here. Like we're gonna see if it feels okay playing fair today, or like mostly fair. If you're new here and you like what you see, please consider subscribing, and if you're a regular, throw me a like before this video begins. This is the easiest way to support my content for free. Let's battle. Yeah, I'm on board for this hand. I have a turn 1 Thoughtseize, I can see what my opponent's doing, and then ponder accordingly. The ponder is opponent's going to 5. My ponder is probably looking for a Witherbloom Apprentice or another cantrip to try and find Witherbloom Apprentice, just kind of given the texture of this hand. But, that could change depending on what my opponent's opener looks like. Unmask, target themselves. Pretty good 5-card hand. So, I don't usually beat that. And if my opponent griefs me, I have to decide whether or not I want to concede. Damn. I know I said I don't usually beat that. And that's true. But this game, 7, 14, 21, yeah, this doesn't change my clock. Let's try to take any discard my opponent has drawn. No discard. I think Entomb is the scariest of these here. My opponent is about to be able to draw 7 cards. Like, they'll attack with Grizzlebrand. They'll be able to go up and then back down to 5 to draw 7 and probably try to put another creature in play. Life is very much not okay. We'll see what we can do, though. Alright, there's the draw 7. I need to dodge discard for 2 turns, and I also need to dodge a secondary creature. It's so incredibly unlikely that I win. Especially since I know my opponent has a Faithless Looting that could get them 2 cards deeper. Alright, there is a Dark Ritual. And this is probably lights out for me. No matter what this is, it gets my opponent a kill next turn. Yes, I will go ahead and concede there. I can't beat Archon. I have 3 Surgical Extractions, 2 Endurances, and a pair of Flusterstorms that I can board in here as interaction. Snuff Out is pretty bad against my opponent as a whole. Fatal Push is pretty bad. hard to tap out for a Night's Whisper. Probably pull an Uro and call it good. I have a little more top end in the form of Endurance. Chain of Smog's weird because it's a combo finish, but it's also something I very much don't want to cast against my opponent in a lot of situations. Not all, but a lot of situations. An awkward hand. How many Abrupt Decays do I have? That's a card I don't really want in my deck. It's 2. That's fine. Hand just doesn't really do anything. Like, I can't cast Ponder, I have to hold it for Force of Will. I get discarded once, and I'm on nothing. I think I'd rather mulligan this one. Why have you forsaken me, lands? I say no to this. It's a perfectly reasonable 5-card hand. I think Flusterstorm goes back. Second one's harder. It's really hard for me to 2-for-1 myself with Force of Will right now. It becomes more interesting with Spelldancer later. I don't know, maybe I can't keep Force of Will on this mulligan and I don't keep a threat. And I try to just like pass my next turn with Flusterstorm up. Possible I'm supposed to get an Underground Sea there. Okay. So if I take my opponent's Grief, their hand currently does nothing. Or no, this can't target themselves. But they can target me and then reanimate it. Alright. I take Grief for now. My opponent's hand currently... Or no, they just fucking reanimate the Grief. I just locked myself into a weird spot. Okay, it seems like they want to hard discard a real card here. If that is their plan, I'm going to go ahead and Sorcery Speed Brainstorm to see if I can hit the 3 remaining Thoughtseizes. A little awkward. That's an Endurance. I guess I hide that on top of my deck? No. Let's hold it up in case they pivot. They are going to go for the hard discard. My lands currently do not produce green for Endurance. Slightly awkward. So I have Flusterstorm backed by Endurance as of right now. That is a Grief. I am going to go ahead and get the Grizzlebrand out of the yard. What got pitched to Grief? It did. This isn't perfect here. Maybe good enough. I lose Flusterstorm. Opponent has a reanimate that they can use on Grief if they want a 3-2, but that doesn't really feel like the prize here. Force of Will, not currently good. Maybe will be good later. Are you going to just reanimate something? Alright, they are going to reanimate the Grief. That will occur. My opponent's got the faster clock as of right now. I probably still have to cast that. It's really awkward if they don't have a non-creature spell that I want to take. I don't know that I get away with, yeah, not doing that. So do I want an Endurance with 2 power, or do I want them to pay the life? I want them to pay the life because I'm going to trade Baleful Strix anyway. Alright. Alright, I take 3 damage. Alright, they're not going to just go for the reanimate on that. That's fine. Pick up a land. At this point, I guess I just hold these back. I'll trade with the Grief. If they want to reanimate it, they can do so. That reanimate isn't creating a second body. Fuck. I think that is gonna be curtains for me. I sack a Strix. I don't have nice clean removal like Swords to Plowshares that can just answer something like that, which is unfortunate, and this is just gonna kill me in the air. GG's. Today's video is sponsored by Cardsphere.com. Cardsphere is a service that allows you to buy, sell, and most importantly, trade your Magic cards with other people and game stores from around the world. As you can see here, they are doing a lot of business. They only take a very small fee, 3%, and if you decide you want cash instead of cards, you can also get paid out via PayPal for a small cut. P.S. They also have articles, so please consider checking them out. Okay, My opponent took an exceptionally long time on their mulligan decision. I'm not sure if they were tanking on the mulligan decision itself or if they had to step away from their computer for a little while. My goal is to play this game out relatively slowly. Like, I have my combo in hand. I have the ability to Force of Will. I need to check what lands I am playing. All right, I do have all 3 basics. I am good for at least starting to play a basic-based game. I will grab my Swamp. I'll play a Baleful Strix. If I trade with the Daze, I trade with the Daze. But this card isn't necessarily super worth countering. All right, my island here is actually pretty awkward because I can't Witherbloom and Thoughtseize next turn. Ooh, maybe not Delver. I kind of assumed my opponent would be on Delver. They play that a lot. Okay. We are chilling. Happy enough starting with the Baleful Strix beats, and from there I'm not 100% sure what I want to do. I think I am just going to cast a Thoughtseize and do kind of a vibe check over there. Like, is my opponent on Fairy Mastermind? Okay. There's permission over there. Ugh. If I take swords, my opponent just has access to Snapcaster swords, and that's not great for me. So I think I'm taking one of the 3 drops, and I just don't know which one. I think it's Narset, and I think I'll pass turn. Right. Swords is happening. That's fine. So hard to do this. Alright, so my opponent is making Snapcaster swords available and Hardcast Force of Negation available. Go ahead and fire this off. Damn it, it is Fairy Mastermind. That is a nuisance. Okay. Alright. A land goes back, and a second land goes back. No fetch, play Witherbloom Apprentice into Chain of Smog. I wish I could play double Witherbloom Apprentice this turn. If I start coming off with Chain of Smog, my opponent just gets through that with all these resources. I think I go land 1 Witherbloom back. Hate this. I'll go ahead and fetch. It doesn't really feel like my opponent's on Wasteland anymore. I'm going to grab a Bayou here. Oh. There's a perfectly reasonable Magic the Gathering card. Go ahead and pass the turn here. Island is so awkward with trying to multi-spell here. Okay, there's a land drop. I think I'm just going to take 2 here. Now, I can't Abrupt Decay it to Fairy if my opponent does that. Alright, I gotta do this. Get out. Narset's very good. I think I am going to Force of Will this in hopes of getting a Force of Will out of my opponent's hand. Force of Will, pitching, Snapcaster Mage. Alright, got it. Sure. I've still got a Force of Negation to deal with. There's a Ponder. My opponent's deck is sweet. Fatal Push, not great here. We're going to be taking a little bit of a weird line. I think I cast Witherbloom Apprentice. Okay. So much for that. I can Chain of Smog my opponent's Teferi at the cost of my own Fatal Push. That Teferi sitting in play is a nightmare for me. I'm going to accept that. That Teferi is just such good Uro insurance. When my opponent redirects this to me, I lose the Fatal Push. I do not wish to copy that spell. My opponent now has 0 cards at hand. I just don't... I don't think I can beat my opponent having 2 active Planeswalkers in play, both of which shut off angles of my deck. Very fast Brainstorm. Alright. Yeah, so for example, my opponent has a Teferi in play. I can't do this at instant speed anymore. I don't like my positioning in this matchup. Like, I want to be a deck that grinds with Uro, but my opponent has white removal that's very good versus Uro, and anti-card draw things like Narset and Fairy Mastermind as well. Alright, my opponent's just finding Force of Will. And like as a combo deck, my opponent can interact with me on so many different levels. Ugh. I do not think that I am destined to win this one. Like this whole playing draw go thing is a nightmare for me. Not really worth conceding yet or anything, but life's bad. Take out that body before it starts clocking me, and my opponent can get their brainstorm. Good news is I'm probably not drawing a second card each turn, because, you know, this. Mercurial Spelldancer, this is perhaps not your time. Note that my opponent does just have a 4-mana draw a card repeatable effect in play right now. Alright, and they are just going to force that, that's fine. Brutal. I'm down to 12. I don't know whether or not my opponent has another copy of Mystic Sanctuary. I have to kind of just play out cards when I draw them in hopes of like taking a Narset off the board. There's still going to be Fairy Mastermind to deal with after that though. Okay, end of turn Brainstorm. Opponent presumably has like swords and prismatic ending. Oh. Yeah. No, that's not great. Now I can't really effectively attack in on Narset either. There's a prismatic ending. Okay, this is a fool's errand at this point, and I recognize that. Arbor Flowers is okay. Endurance has some text. I need to check Fairy Mastermind's creature type. Is it a Fairy Rogue? So I have Fairy Rogues and Human Wizards that Plague Engineer could do things against. I just don't feel like my deck's good here. Flusterstorm technically playable too. Like everything that I try to do with grinding involves drawing cards, and my opponent's very good at stopping that. And Flusterstorm doesn't counter the planeswalkers that I probably need to be able to counter. A only kills some of them. Maybe I don't need to get ahead on mana. Might just need more threat density so that I have a better plan B and things inevitably go wrong. I don't like this. And I think I'm not gonna play out the basic. I think I want to put that back into my deck. All of my multi-spelling is going to want me having like non-blue pips. And I am just going to go ahead and brainstorm at sorcery speed on my own turn, I think. Ugh. Not great. And got a lot better. Go ahead and put 2 lands back here and then keep what is actually a pretty reasonable hand. Alright, opponent's just going to make a land drop. And I should technically do this in my own upkeep, but I'm not expecting like Stifle or anything. I want to make an extra land drop here. I am given the opportunity to do so. So let's attempt Uro. Uro's pretty likely to resolve. I'll draw a card. My opponent Swords to Plowshares it and moves on with their life. Okay, there's the preemptive white mana. Fuck this Fairy Mastermind. I hate it. It's so good. This one can hit play here, I guess. So like my opponent also gets to draw a card there, so I actually did not get card advantage from Uro. Now hopefully my Plague Engineer resolves and I clean up this body. But this card seems really hot in blue mirrors. Probably not so much excited to get about that card versus, you know, your random Chalice of the Void deck or whatever, but... Oh. F. I can't even consider endurancing that. Oh, okay. No follow-up cantrip. I mean... I could? Seems wrong to try. Let's start with an attempt on Plague Engineer. The Brainstorm. My hope is that this resolves so that I can just cast Night's Whisper. F. Is it Staticaster? If I can't cast this, it doesn't make sense to cast that. I'm playing out a Witherbloom Apprentice into removal in a way that I'm not a fan of. IU for variety. But this just eats Swords to Plowshares or Prismatic Ending. But I guess if this dies, I get to keep Endurance, and then I can like play Endurance and Chain of Smog my opponent's resources in a fair way. But yeah, this is my first time playing against this card, and this card is sweet. Like, 2/1 body isn't the biggest thing in the world. It's enough. Okay, there's more. I'm probably not going to like. That is a Teferi, which makes my endurance very noticeably worse. My cards just fucking suck. So let's attempt a Thoughtseize. Try to take relevant removal. Yes. Take swords. Opponent minus the Teferi to draw a card a minute ago, so I can clear out their graveyard and then hopefully do some cool shit after that. They don't have anything good showing, but they do have a dress down. Alright, there's that land drop. Bit of a weird turn. I think I'm going to go this way. Pre-combat endurance. Try to force the issue on something like a force of will immediately. Failed at that. I will attempt an attack on Teferi. Awkward if my opponent has the Wandering Emperor. Ooh, okay, Teferi dies. So I can now choose to Chain of Smog my opponent. It's just awkward because I have a draw engine. I don't really want to cast this Night's Whisper and let my opponent draw a card for free, though. So let's try this. My opponent activates that. Each draw a card. I make them discard 2. They redirect it at me. I make them discard their remaining 2 cards. They targeted themselves to flex. Alright. Everybody's hellbent. Okay, so now I have a pair of endurances versus my opponent's active Fairy Mastermind. And we'll see if I can just beat my opponent down fast enough. I'm going to absolutely eat it to something like a Supreme Verdict. I don't know how likely my opponent is to be playing something like that when they have like Fairy Masterminds that they want sitting on the board. Okay. They activate that, they get a second card. Yeah, this is pretty strong. My opponent will Mystic Sanctuary back that Ponder and cast it. My opponent needs to start thinking about chump blocks as of next turn, or at least trading with Witherbloom Apprentice. Discard lines up so poorly here. Yep. Ooh. That's tough. I think I just hold up Force of Will. This attack is easy. I don't know how I feel about that attack. It just trades with this and stops my opponent from drawing additional cards. I think I'm okay with that. Alright. I didn't get nice value out of Witherbloom Apprentice in terms of a couple of drains. Okay. I'll trade 1 for 1 with that. I really wanted to use that to protect endurance from removal, because that's like the primary way that I win the game is by hitting with endurance twice. But here we are. Imagine my opponent activates this, or no. Yeah, they can activate it during, no, it's the same, never mind. Second card per turn. Thoughtseize is awkward. I think I cast it. I can save that for backing something else up a little bit later. My opponent has more cards in hand. Alright, so my opponent activates that. I get a card. That's a good one to draw. Opponent gets 2 cards there. The next turn I can cast a Thoughtseize into Plague Engineer and then attempt pull. Alright, there is a fetch land. Fairy Mastermind is being held back. Brainstorm's a thing. Let's start here though. Oh baby. Okay, so I take Force of Will and then I just resolve Plague Engineer and get my 2 for 1. Most of the time. Now my opponent can fetch, go to 1. My opponent had an out there. It's fetch, go to 1, activate Fairy Mastermind. They draw 2 cards. If it's Force of Will, oh no, if it's Force of Will plus blue card, they fetched at 1. JK, not on outs. Ugh. This is rough to play against. Like from the perspective of a blue deck. I keep this on the draw. Really threat dense. I think I keep it on the draw. I hate that it's Brainstorm rather than Ponder. I think being on the draw with Force of Will as a catch-all here is pretty reasonable. I sorcery speed this brainstorm. Those of fucking fairies? I think so. Alright. I am not ready for Chain of Smog. I don't think I need Night's Wisp. Well, I can redraw Night's Whisper. That's fine. Alright, second land drop. And we're chilling. Yeah, like, this is awkward. So many of my things just fucking cantrip. So, like, I'm going to cast this. My opponent's going to play a fairy. Then I'm going to Force of Will. If they Force of Will back, they're in a pretty good position. Show it to me. Yeah. I Force of Will, pitch that. So that my cards can stay live. But, like, I hate this. Yeah, I don't have the counterspell for that. My opponent gets to go fishing. Pyroblast. Sure. I'll attack Narset so my opponent can't keep that effect around forever. Night's Whisper is bad. I guess I'm going to play Endurance on my opponent's turn. Alright, so my opponent is just attempting to keep this Narset alive. Get another drop. Attempt Endurance. Okay. Alright. Huh. My opponent did that in a way where the Swords of Plowshares went back into their deck. That feels wrong to me. I can't see their hand. They also might just be trying to play quickly. They're down a decent chunk on clock. Attempt a Thoughtseize here. Brainstorm in response is very reasonable. Fuck. Take the Teferi so my opponent can't have two different planeswalkers, but holy shit. I don't know, maybe I'm supposed to take the other Narset. Like, the issue is I'm never going to attack and kill this, right? Because my opponent has two different Pyroblast effects. So it's better to get rid of Teferi so I can at least pretend to play at instant speed. I just have to play this out, I think. I just very much don't think holding open mana and passing the turn is favorable to me. Wrong one. Classic. I do think I'm supposed to put this on Rogue, though. Like, the Fairy Mastermind is so much more annoying than Snapcaster Mage. Like, I might be able to fight through a Narset eventually. Alright, so there's the other one. Okay, just a brainstorm. Absolutely could have been worse. Ugh. Can't reasonably attack here. Have to pass the turn. My opponent has a Pyroblast for my Force of Will. So that's a thing. Yeah. I think the best way to describe this match, is that my opponent is playing blue in a way that makes me feel like I am not able to play blue. Right? Like, their Teferi Narsets and Fairy Masterminds are going and stripping me of my ability to do things like draw cards and play cantrips, and I just feel so incredibly constrained. Fuck. I can't, like, brainstorm these excess lands away. Unless I randomly time my opponent out, I don't think I win this one. Alright, there's a Ponder, which can clear the brainstorm. It does so very quickly. I'll do it again. I mean, yeah. I will very, 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 very begrudgingly do this. Yarr. Oh wait, no, that works the way that I want it to. Not the way they want it to. And now, so my Uro doesn't get surgicaled, I want to go and fetch so that I can cast this as soon as I have priority. Green, green, blue, blue. Alright, cast Uro. I've gained 6 life this turn. I don't get to do the cool Uro draw card shit, though. Again, my opponent's cards are incidentally shutting off all of my possible value engines. And then that shit happens. 1, 2, 3, 4 cards in graveyard. Technically a 5th card for the graveyard. There's an Uro. Gain 3. And nuke the remainder of my graveyard. Play a new Uro. Sure. So this is just going to eat a blast. I can try again in a couple of turns, but my opponent has 6 damage a turn as a clock. And my cantrips don't work. Neither does Night's Whisper, neither does the Uro card draw. Like, I'll play cards out because I have to play cards out. There's just a Force of Will. I need like Plague Engineer, I guess. Take 6 this turn, go to 5. Draw my other Plague Engineer, put it on human, get rid of 2 Snapcaster Mages, and try to find time to get to another Uro. Sure. Okay. And that'll be it. I'm dead. GG. I think this one is going to be the recommended round, but mostly for my opponent's deck. Alright. Pretty reasonable opening hand here. I'm going to go ahead and lead on a Thoughtseize. My opponent's already taken 1 mulligan. I'm going to try to punch a hole a little bit further into their hand. Okay. I will take the Brainstorm. OG Orum's Chant? Orum's Chant. I like this a lot. Your Cabal Therapy resolves. I don't think you're hitting. Actually, Brainstorm is totally a reasonable name in the dark. Alright. I want some mystery in my hand here. Go ahead and fetch, I think, Bayou, and drop the Spelldancer into play. Alright. Opponent says they like the content. See how much they end up trying to bullying me. So, let's start with Uro. Opponent says the viewers can probably skip this game. I'll start with Brainstorm, though. I would like some oil. Yeah. Put back like, I don't want this right now. Put back like 1, 2, do this, fetch, drop, Brainstorm for second oil counter. Oh, fucking gross. Okay. Put back 1, 2, go to combat, attack for 2, opponent goes to 18, remove the oil counters, and I will go ahead and cast a Thoughtseize, which does get me another counter, and I will get to copy it. Now I'm going to strip both of those copies of Orum's Chant from my opponent's hand, and all I have to do is beat an Urza Saga. Should be easy enough. I've got a Baleful Strix coming. I have Force of Will as kind of a security blanket. I could have played this in a way that like took all of the lands out of my opponent's hand by doing Chain of Smog nonsense, but I don't really know that that was good. Nah. Force of Will gives me a counter. Everything's great. Oh, I had Witherbloom Apprentice. I just stacked my deck wrong then. My next card is Baleful Strix, right? I just physically stacked that wrong. Alright, take 2. Opponent's at 15. Not remove 2 oil counters from my critter. And note, these 2 cards play really well together. I should have said this in the deck tech, but this is whenever you cast or copy. There's Shuko. Oh my god. So my opponent just had the Illusionist in hand. It was their 1 draw that I didn't know about. I knew about land to fairy. That's brutal. Alright, so my opponent activates Shuko, targeting Sephid Illusionist, milling themselves out entirely. Then they're going to cast a Dread Return on Thassa's Oracle, and I am going to die. Let's just do a quick skim of this, see if there's anything interesting in here. Notably, no Stoneforge Mystic package. C'est la vie. I hate playing against this deck. Deck's so good. It's really hard to hate out. Because, like, if you go for the graveyard focused stuff, they can just cast an Oracle from hand, and it's a problem. Like, do I want to play something like Nullrod when it doesn't always stop combo attempts because they just have nomads in core as well? It's super fucking awkward. I don't feel like I need Uros here. I think I can kill my opponent with other stuff. I'm in theory bringing in 4 threats, so I can go down quite a few threats and have that be okay. Maybe don't need to go this deep on surgicals. Flash threats are just so good here. My Chain of Smog combo is awkward when my opponent can just interrupt it for 1 mana with Chant. Well, I guess that was more of a situation where I wanted to cast both in one turn, so never mind. But, like, those are sorcery speed cards, and my opponent can just silence me. And yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, I'm just, like, not the biggest fan of these sorcery speed cards here. I am going to keep this, but I feel like this hand loses. It's super interactive, but it doesn't actually present any sort of clock. Ugh. Take the ponder here. Buckle up, folks. It'll be a long one. Okay, my opponent's not going to play out the Nomads in Core. I don't get a good target for my Abrupt Decay. My opponent's boarding up this much. Fuck. So incredibly good here. Like, my opponent just makes Construct. I just hemorrhage value trying to deal with that. Not to mention I'm just kind of like time walking myself here. Oh my god. Kingdom for a Brainstorm. A couple of fair constructs might end up just beating me. I also have to double fetch here in case my opponent has boarded in a Pithing Needle. Which I'm not expecting. But YouTube comments will never let me live it down if it happens. Get one Bayou so I have access to all of these. And I guess another prop. There's a Shuko, which at this point is just a damage source. I have to Abrupt Decay construct tokens here, unfortunately. I need to just work on getting the board under control. I, in theory, have spells from hand under control. Just so bad against the board. Yeah, that's fine. I can consider surgically extracting an Urza Saga. That's not really how I want to use that card in this matchup. It is extremely inconvenient for me that I just have all of these Force of Wills at the same time. Yep. Just not worth a card. I can't double Force of Will if I do this. Hopefully, Force of Will with a surgical extraction backup is fine. Yep, like use your swords. This is me trading resources. I can surgically extract swords if I feel like that's a good thing to do. I don't exactly feel like that's a good thing to do. I'm at 11. F. Yep. Gotta hope that my opponent doesn't guess that there. Counter it on the way back down. Have critical targets, but okay, there is a reasonable Magic the Gathering card. All right. I need this Night's Whisper to draw something. Literally anything would be fine. My fucking Uro. Like, I guess I could have mulliganed this hand. Like, I didn't have a clock, but I had boarded out a decent number of those to try to become more interactive. Even if I did have a clock, it just would have gotten taken. Yep. I am just going to lose to fully fair beats here. Thank you, deck. It's honestly funny. GG's. All right. Reasonable hand here. I will keep this one. Okay. I don't know exactly what to ponder for here. I am going to cast it mostly to put a card in graveyard for purposes of Uro. Like, this can just find, like, cantrips for Mercurial Spelldancer or a Force of Will. I don't know specifically what I need against my opponent. Maybe that means I should just, like, play Polluted Delta Pass, hold up Fatal Push, and Brainstorm. Bayou, Ponder, Underground Sea. I am willing to take a Ponder redraw here. And an extra land, that's fine. We got Mercurial Spelldancer as my play if my opponent doesn't do anything. Elves? Bojuka Bog, Dryad Arbor. Ooh. How greedy am I? I can cast Mercurial Spelldancer, touching with Delta to clear the top of my library. Next turn I cast Brainstorm Ponder, and then I double Fatal Push. So fucking greedy. So fucking greedy. Obviously, I'm going to do it. It's almost certainly wrong to not Fatal Push Dryad Arbor. But it's round 4. My deck hasn't done shit yet, so We need to do some impressive stuff. Make the content entertaining. Sure. Rude. Pretty brutal. Fucking Newton elves, man. Okay. I don't think I get to live the dream of double fatal push now. Fiend Artisan is much scarier as this game goes along. Despite the fact that I really do want to kill that Dryad Arbor. I just can't let my opponent like randomly have Cradle and then Fiend Artisan into some bullshit like Grist that just absolutely runs me over. Cradle? Oh. Oh. No, that's fine. I'm not mad. You're mad. Okay. I do have Abrupt Decays in my deck. I'm going to ponder looking for a decay. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. No shuffle. Brainstorm. Put back. 1, 2. Land drop. Fetch. Clear those lands. Drop. And Decay Grist. I have an okay setup for if I find an Uro. I draw one of my 2 combo pieces. I can start looking for the other. Right. Not so much with the Uro. I knew about that bog though. I think I will just start on Strix and get 1 card deeper before I decide what to do with Ponder. Okay. So, go ahead and fetch. I think I don't get a Bayou here. I just keep these all as blue so I can chain together the greatest possible number of cantrips. This is going to be a time where I start to actually just do magecraft nonsense. Those aren't bad. I don't think I want to play the game like that, though. Like, I would much rather just find cantrip. It's just like cantrip into cantrip, 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 cantrip. Will get my opponent dead quickly. Like, if it's Snuff Out and a cantrip, I'm 100% keeping that, but I think Snuff Out Force Land like does not take advantage of the opening that I have here. Dryad Arbor. I am probably snuffing that out. This is very rare. Limited edition hardcast Snuff Out. My opponent has endurance. That's fine. I lose my graveyard. I still have an attack for 1. I guess it's better to just attack in. And if my opponent casts the endurance, I just get rid of that instead. That was a misplay on my end. Sure. Urza's Saga? Sure. Another Apprentice. That will kill my opponent incredibly quickly if I find any cantrips. And I do just have a combo kill. But I played this one a little suboptimally. Lost a couple points of damage for it. Alright, there is a Brainstorm. This is going to add up real quick, because every instant and sorcery spell is drain 2, which feels nice. Put back 1, 2, play a Strix, redraw the island. Don't really need to play that for Brainstorm fodder. I'm gonna attack with both of these, put my opponent to 3, lose a Witherbloom Apprentice, fatal push from there, taking out a body. I know that I want to do that. Witherbloom Apprentices are worth so much damage in hand. I'll just hit my opponent to 8. End of turn, they can make their Urza Saga token. I'll just fatal push that for the purposes of draining 2 and denying 1 mana to Cradle. That puts my opponent to 6. I think my opponent's dead right there if I had played this game better and kept the endurance instead of the Dryad Arbor a couple turns back. We'll see if I can recover though. Yes, Retrofitter Foundry, sure. Fine. Good value. Birds of Paradise. That's a flying blocker. That matters. Okay, there's a Servo. My opponent's turtled up at 5 life. Am I the beatdown still? I can be the beatdown for at least 1 turn, I think. The opponent might just trade Endurance for Strix. Don't block with Bird? That's fine. My opponent is at 4 life, which is 2 sets of triggers from Witherbloom Apprentice, or 1 set, plus a pair of Baleful Strix hits, and I've got insulation from the biggest and scariest things my opponent can do, like Natural Order. Bow is fine. Opponent can then untap that, and then create a Thopter, and then untap that again. They can then block with a Thopter and then turn it into a 4/4 if they would like. I mean, this is what my opponent needed to happen. They need me to break off on spells. My opponent also might just trade Endurance, trade Thopter. I might need to just chill here. Stop trying to force damage with Baleful Strix and just assume that I will kill my opponent with Witherbloom Apprentice attacks. My opponent's construct is going to get big very quickly. Okay. Going for the 4/4. Alright. And we just do this whole same song and dance again. Note that I have lethal with any instant or sorcery drawn because I can Force of Will my own card. Yep. Fine, just trading for that. That is fine with me. Thank you, deck. 4/4 at end of turn, which is fine. I will take that for the 2 damage. Really awkward if this is a bait and my opponent has like a follow-up Natural Order. Amount of times, quite good. Unfortunately for them, it's another Cradle. Well, maybe not unfortunately. Like, another Cradle can do a lot with Retrofitter Foundry. I'm just going to jump ahead to my opponent's ending board here. Okay, this is where we ended up. Fine. This block. And taking 4 damage again. Literally any instant or sorcery kills my opponent. Cool. This is absolutely fucking absurd. Like, I will be so incredibly disappointed if I just lose this game to bricking off that hard. Again, I did make a mistake earlier in the game. So, like, my opponent could be dead by now, but it is so statistically unlikely to just rip like that. Alright, so here's where we're at after a couple of activations. My opponent just sends in with 4/4. I will take that. That's 17. Ow! Ow. There's another 4/4. There's a Fiend Artisan, which will kill me next turn. Alright, then my opponent's going to do this nonsense again. Okay, my opponent's done activating. Yeah, alright, so they know one of us is dead next turn. I know that as well. I'm going to thin the deck. There are very few misses here. So there will be 2 lands in deck, plus fetch lands. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 8, 9 misses. And 3 of those misses are redraws, so they don't really count as misses. God. Ow. Yeah, sure. My opponent's doing Retrofitter shit again. Presumably just to activate Fiend Artisan for a Crater Hoof and I die. Yep. That is so beyond disappointing. Okay. I'll get a couple of Endurances to help keep Fiend Artisans smaller. I'll play Plague Engineer. Witherbloom Apprentice combo, or even, Witherbloom Apprentice finding a single spell would be, in theory, good against this deck. It is black. It dodges Snuff Out. That matters. Mercurial Spelldancer does not dodge Snuff Out. Opponent has Bojuka Bog on a stick, making Uro worse. Do I even want Force of Will in this matchup? My opponent just wants to grind me into dust. Maybe 2 for 1ing myself isn't great. I just board out Force of Wills, become fairer. I don't really know how to sideboard here. Mulligan? His hand is fine if it hits a cantrip. His hand is fine if it hits a land. I will keep this one, pitching the Brazen Borrower, probably. Underground Sea, pass. There's a Once Upon a Time. Finding a Cradle. Rain Sun's fine. I will Fatal Push the Dryad Arbor for the sake of mana efficiency here. Because I just want to tap out for Witherbloom and then hopefully tap out for Uro after that. Okay, cool. Grab a Tropical Island to gear up towards Uro. And put a Witherbloom Apprentice in play. Again, any land, any cantrip, and this hand is pretty great. Lair of the Hydra? Sure. This card does dodge Snuff Out. Okay. Did hit something reasonable here. Up another Trop. Play an Uro. We're not quite there yet. Chain of Smog gets me a kill next turn. Kind of like dance in and out of combat here. And then after waiting for a minute, I just pass the turn. Bird is fine. This has a sorcery speed restriction, right? It does. I don't want to kill this yet. I want to wait probably until my end of turn. Go ahead and just kill that now, so that my opponent doesn't have access to Gaia's Cradle mana on my turn. Yep, forcing something like an Endurance now. Now my opponent is tapped out, and Chain of Smog combo should do its thing. I guess I will ponder first. Does not hurt to do so. I will leave another Chain of Smog and another Witherbloom Apprentice on top, in case things go wrong. Chain of Smog, target me. Guard 2 cards. Copy. Alright, and my opponent concedes. I think I'm going into this without Force of Will. I have a reasonable hand here that I don't think I can mulligan. I don't like that it doesn't have a turn 1 removal spell, but it has a turn 1 piece of discard followed by a turn 2 removal spell and a turn 3 removal spell, kind of. I think that's fine. Underground Sea. Sure. Let's see what's going on over there. Oh, I think I'd take Natural Order and then Abrupt Decay Grist. If I leave Natural Order floating, it's just like awkward later. Right. Take Natural Order. Allosaurus Shepherd. My opponent can play Cradle, and then Birds gives them black for Grist. Yep. Get your insect. Drop a Grist, and then hopefully I get some good direction for what to do with my Ponder with my next draw step. Something like a Plague Engineer isn't ideal right now. I cannot let that thing untap. Brazen Borrower will be a thing that I do with my turn a good portion of the time here. Alright. Uro. Uro and above average draw. No, Uro doesn't answer this Fiend Artisan problem. Ugh. Alright. This is why I was kind of afraid of not having an initial removal spell in the hand. Now I'm just kind of behind in terms of tempo in a way that I don't like. Sure. Alright. Allosaurus Shepherd can just basically start turning into a 5/5 beater, by the way. It has a whole bunch of different creature types here. Don't know that I have the mana to play Mercurial Spelldancer here. Accordingly, not going to do that, despite the fact that it is one of my own value engines. Land goes back. Land goes back. My plan now becomes combo off. I go ahead and fetch a Trop. I think play a Ponder. Okay. I can decay a Fiend Artisan to stop the tutoring. Then take some damage. Next turn I can fetch, clear, and try to find a Chain of Smog for a combo-based kill before Allosaurus Shepherd kills me. My opponent also might invest mana into things that aren't Allosaurus Shepherd. Sure. I am taking 3. Fine. I think I am going to... Well, do I want to fetch and get rid of Uro? Or I just want to draw Uro and play Uro? No, I want a new card. Alright, so there's a Strix. I think at this point I do go ahead and play that out. I will do this now in case I specifically draw like a Snuff Out. Negative. These cards don't look particularly strong here, fortunately. Got a Strix for Allosaurus Shepherd. There's a Thoughtseize. Quite good. I lose my removal spell. My opponent just has Hoof. My opponent just has Hoof, and I'll die. Alright. GG's. Well, at this point, we're 0-4 in the league and we can't get anything out of it, so let's wrap up this video. Overall thoughts on the deck list. Fun to play? Like, I know it was kind of miserable just, like, absolutely bricking off, like, time and time again against elves there. Like, that was incredibly frustrating. Outside of that, this was a fun deck to play, but I just didn't feel like it was there. As a Mercurial Spelldancer deck, this deck felt too fair, and I felt like my life total was super negatively impacted. Like, there was a game where I double copied a Thoughtseize. I think it was against Cephalid Breakfast, and like that for life after a couple of fetch lands was horrifying to the point where like an Urza Saga that got slightly out of control might have reasonably beat me. Similarly, you can't really copy Snuff Out. So I don't think a bug color combination is a good home for Mercurial Spelldancer. And again, like those same sorts of things apply to Knight's Whisper. I honestly just wish I was a Witherbloom Apprentice Uro deck. Like completely get rid of the Mercurial Spelldancer side of the equation, play one more Witherbloom, two more Chain of Smogs, and like I think my deck would have been better. There were definitely places where I could have tightened up my play, and like it's possible I could have turned one of these into a win. But ultimately, I don't feel like this deck is really there on raw power level. I just don't feel a strong reason to be in Bug right now. The white removal is just so good, and access to Pyroblast is really strong. So like if you ask me what am I supposed to be favored against? Not opposing blue decks right now, because the white removal is very good against Uro, and things like Fairy Mastermind and Narset were obliterating me. I didn't feel good against combo. In game one, I have 8-ish relevant cards, and my clock's not super fast a lot of the time, unless I get Uro into play. The Witherbloom Apprentice is like my end game inevitability. I wonder if this deck wants a couple of Green Suns. The answer is probably no, right? Because like there's this Mercurial Spelldancer package in there too, so I don't think you can use Green Sun as a way to get both Witherbloom and Uro. Yeah, I don't know. This one doesn't quite feel there to me, but it was enjoyable to play. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please click the like button on the way out, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. See ya!